Welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast. My name is Dr. Patty Robbie Keller, and I'm the Sports Administration Program Director at Boston College. I manage the Masters in Sports Administration. What I love about our program and leading our program is that all our faculty work in sports. Our students get the excellent experience that they bring to the table, the education, and their network. So when our students leave our program, most of them are already set up with a job in sports. We give you open opportunities to find so many different avenues to work in sport. Our program is very explosive and dynamic, and we hope you come and check us out. Our entire program is $42,000 a year, and it can be done in 18 months, online or in person. Thank you for listening, and enjoy the episode.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown, and welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast, where we highlight executive and organizational leadership. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at 1Q Leadership. Our guest today is Colton Primm. Colton is the Senior Associate Athletics Director for Championship Resources at Louisiana Tech. Greetings, Colton. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Ty. Thanks for having me, man.
Yes, sir. Now, you're at Louisiana Tech for roughly 2 years, in the industry for almost 10 years, right? Previous stops at Arkansas, Central Arkansas, extensive experience in development, and your first experience in development was in grad school at Ohio. Now, what I understand about your experience there is you were brought in and immediately put in charge of creating, I guess for the lack of a better term, a major giving society. I guess it's called the Aillet Society there, right?
Correct, yep.
Talk to me a little bit about what is the Aillet Society, right? And how was that put on your plate when you first got hired?
Yeah, so I came here in August of 21, so starting year 3 now. And when I got here, my athletic director, Dr. Eric Wood, really gave me 3 responsibilities: fundraise, and fundraise. And really, shortly after I got here is when conference realignment really picked up. We hit this kind of new era that we live in now. And so the Aillet Society was really one of our responses to conference realignment. We kind of have this tagline: we want to be the most sought after group of 5 program in conference realignment. And so we felt like we needed to have a major giving society in place in order to do that.
Okay, excellent. Now, when you talk about creating a major giving society, when you talk about creating a brand new organization for raising money, to me, it sounds like, I guess schools would already have that in place, but that's not something that Louisiana Tech had, I guess, right?
Correct. Yeah, we had our athletics annual fund, and we had different levels of that
Right.
went up to $10,000, but we didn't have anything in place as far as 5-year pledges. And so, being in a place like Louisiana Tech, we work with the Louisiana Tech University Foundation, and so whenever we have a signed pledge agreement, we're able to forecast. In some instances, the foundation lets us borrow against those pledges, so we can move forward with projects more quickly.
Okay, that makes sense. So this is 3 years in, you mentioned, and you've created this Aillet Society, and my assumption is that it has been successful, or we probably wouldn't be talking about it, right? Let's say you had somebody who potentially wants to do this on their campus, right? What is a blueprint for creating a major giving society? Or what steps would you take, or would you advise someone take to create it? Like, what do you do first, second, third, that kind of situation?
Yeah, I think first you have to identify what your purpose is. And for us, we talked about conference realignment, but we also had a North End Zone project that had already begun. And I think having this avenue to support at the major gift level was very important. We never had a way to formally steward and recognize those that go above and beyond their annual giving. And so I think starting with purpose is number one. Number 2, obviously coming up with your giving amounts, which for us, we've got different levels within our society, but it starts at $25,000, which can be paid over 5 years. So that's $5,000 a year. Again, that's outside of the annual fund. And then I think number 3 is just identifying, okay, who are our key stakeholders? Who are our prospects? Who are we going after? Is it going to be our existing donors? Are we looking to find new donors to start this? Is it a mix between the two? So I'd say those are probably the first 3 steps in the blueprint of starting a major giving society.
Okay, let's look at those a little bit. Purpose, levels, and then who could possibly be a part of it. What is the purpose of Aillet Society at Louisiana Tech?
Yeah, again, I think the 5-year pledge piece is really important to us.
Okay.
Annual fund, obviously that's annual. We can't predict if someone's going to continue to give at that same level every year. IA Society, we know we're kind of locking somebody into that 5-year pledge. So again, it goes back to the forecasting piece of it. So that's kind of purpose for us, I guess.
Okay, so the purpose of the annual fund, the purpose of the IA Society are probably similar, but it's really how do we lock people in long term, right? It's really giving us a vehicle to be able to lock people in long term is what it sounds like to me.
That's correct, and that's a good point too, Ty. Those are two different buckets of money, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So, annual fund, that's unrestricted dollars, operational costs, scholarship support, things like
Right.
that. Simply put, that keeps the lights on for us.
Okay.
The IA Society, this is again above and beyond annual fund, but that bucket of money, we're focused more on capital projects with those funds and sport specific giving. So I mentioned the North End Zone project, namely an academic center and a new video board. So for us, back to purpose, starting this major giving society around a project that supports all 16 of our sports, all 350 student athletes. With the academic center piece, it was not just a football only or a
Yeah.
basketball only, impacts everyone. So that was a good way to get all donors involved right off the bat.
Yeah, I think that's actually right. Is the purpose is now we can use it for different reasons as opposed to supporting basically the general operations of the athletic department.
Absolutely.
So then you talk about the levels, and I hear you using the term beyond the annual fund. So meaning, like, do I have to give to the annual fund, and then after I get a certain level, I can then give to IA Society, or there's just two separate gifts that I can give? Or tell me about the terminology you're using when you say beyond the annual fund, and how you decide what levels to make people,
Yeah.
to be a part of society.
Yeah. I mean, really, for us, the annual funds are our lifeblood. I mean,
Right.
we need that every year. But when I say above and beyond, the annual fund, good or bad, it's really become transactional in a way,
Oh,
Ty. I
okay,
mean,
I got
you
it.
look
Yeah.
at the annual fund and you're immediately looking at a benefits chart and you're looking at tickets and parking passes and things like that. That's a challenge we have, and we have to do a better job of educating our donors and letting them know, hey, it's still important to give this, even if you live out of state and you can't take advantage of the tickets and
Yeah.
parking. We
Okay.
still need your help with operational. But you do not have to be an annual fund donor to be a part of the IA Society either.
Got it.
So for some people, they may look at LTAC as being LTAC is Louisiana Tech Athletic Club, our annual fund.
Mm-hmm.
They may look at that and like I said, they may say, hey, I don't really see what's in this for me, but I get the IA Society. I get the big picture. That's a philanthropic gift. That's not tied to tickets and parking. And then if you got someone that does want the tickets and parking, then when I say above and beyond, they've got to give to LTAC to get the tickets and
Right.
parking. And then
Okay.
if they
That
want to be
makes
a part
sense.
of the society, they give to that. So two different buckets there.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense, actually. It's interesting, right? Because I have heard that a transformational versus transactional versus philanthropic. And I imagine this is educational for me when you talk about the fundraising and development aspect. Let me think about this. In the transactional aspect of like L Tech, I guess is what you're calling it, right? The annual fund, does it only go so high? Like I give so much because I get these benefits, but after a while, it doesn't make sense for me to give more than what the top level of benefit could be. Is that? Tell me about that aspect. If I'm a donor and I come at it in that mindset.
Yeah, that's a good question. We don't cap our annual fund, of course. I mean, you can give as much
Yeah,
as you'd
right.
like,
Yeah, exactly.
but in terms of benefits, it really stops at $10,000 a year. So
Okay.
that $10,000 is going to get you the best parking pass right in front of the stadium
Yeah.
with a reserve sign with your name on it. It's going to get you the best ticket opportunity to buy the best tickets, things like that. But of course, if someone really understands it and understands the need for operational dollars, and that's where their heart's at, of course they can continue to give above and beyond. But from a benefit standpoint, 10,000 is kind of our cap.
So I imagine that uh, cap, as we're calling it, it's probably how you decided to make the levels for the IA Society. Talk about that part, the identifying what levels to make for donations there.
It was, and you'll see some schools with major giving societies that start at $50,000, which would be
Mm-hmm.
$10,000 a year for 5 years. For a school our size and this new concept, we really didn't want to leave anybody out or outprice somebody starting at 10,000. So at Louisiana Tech University in general, a major gift is considered $25,000 paid over 5 years. So
Okay.
we decided to start there. Hey, let's get people in the door first. If we get to a point where we've got a lot of people that want to join and we want to make it a little more exclusive, we can always, up the ante a little bit and start it at 50 instead of 25. But for us, man, participation was the most important part. So
Yep.
that was why we decided to start at 25. But we do have different levels, 25, 50, 100, on up to a million. There's 6 or 7 different levels there. And we can dive into the benefits a little bit if you'd like, but we felt
Yeah.
like even though it is a philanthropic gift, it's still human nature to want to know what you get in return for something. So we do have a few benefits associated with being a part of the society as well.
Yeah. What are those? I mean, break that down for a little bit for us, the benefits.
Yeah, so when I started the society, I talked about prospects as well, trying to figure out who your audience is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
I really started with kind of our key stakeholders that were members of LTAC that are kind of our regulars that we see at a lot of our events, that come to our donor events, and we can continually count on to give for us. So I went to them first. I didn't want to be the outsider coming from Arkansas and just making Louisiana Tech the Arkansas way. That
Right.
I didn't want to be tone deaf to what North Louisiana looks like and what Louisiana Tech's campus and alumni look like. So really went to 5, 6, 7 key stakeholders here locally first and talked to them about the concept and made sure that they felt like that was something that they would want to be a part of, but also that they could convince their peers to be a part of as well. And so jumping into the benefits part of it, the feedback I continue to get, Ty, was, Colton, I don't need another Louisiana Tech polo. I've got plenty of that swag in my closet. Tickets and parking, I get that through LTAC. If there's anything you could give me, it would be information. I want to feel like that I'm, kind of in the center of what's going on in the know, and then access. And so we kind of tailored the Aillet Society benefits around those 2 themes, information and access. So in terms of information, you'll actually hear us refer to our Aillet Society members as being shareholders. So we had a little play on words there. So we said, okay, what do shareholders do? Well, shareholders have shareholder meetings. And so we decided, okay, let's get this core group of donors together and let's have quarterly shareholder meetings. And so what that looks like, Ty, is we jump on a Zoom call just like this, and we do that once a quarter with Dr. Wood and myself. We'll sit down and kind of go through an agenda of items that we want to discuss. And really, those are items that we really want to dive into with this key group of supporters. It's not the general coach speak that you hear us out talking about in public. We want these people to be in the know. So we go through those agenda items, and at the end of the meeting, it's really an open forum. It's an opportunity for our shareholders to ask questions. They've got direct access to the athletic director. They can provide feedback, ideas, things of that nature. So that was information. And then access is really things that don't cost us a lot of money, sideline passes to home games, private practice experiences. We even had some donors come and sit in on a film session with us, with our basketball team and also with our football team. So we take some donors at certain levels to away games on a team playing with us, but for the most part, we wanted those things to be things that you can't just go to the campus bookstore and buy. Those are experiences that you can only get by being a shareholder in the Aillet Society.
Yeah, that's interesting. Are there different levels of information and access? You know what I mean?
There are different levels of access. Information, we allow all of our shareholders to be on those calls. But yes, the access, different levels. We do have, again, play on words. Instead of calling it a benefits chart, it's kind of a dividends chart there for our shareholders. But there are different dividends associated with the different levels.
Right. That makes sense. Okay, so you touched on the third step, which was identifying specific people. You did that based on who had given to the LTEC annual fund, who was consistent, and then went after those people. What would you think be the next step after you identified the people you've presented what this organization is? My assumption is that now you got to figure out how to multiply the number of people involved. But coach me up on what's after identifying. You create the fund. And then you get to the point where you identify people who can get to the fund. So what's next after that?
Yeah, so that really leads us into our launch, Ty. So we really kind of went through a silent phase, starting, I guess that would have been January of 22, And we kind of had the nuts and bolts of the society in place. We didn't have all of our collateral materials ready, but we felt like we were at a spot where we could begin sharing the message with who we felt like were our current key stakeholders and getting them signed on the society. So we gave ourselves about an 8-month runway, 7-8 month runway there to get this thing built up through the silent phase. And so, went to some current donors and visited with them about it. And so our goal was to get to, we want to have 20 to 25 shareholders before we went public. Just so at that point we would have built some momentum and built some credibility with the society. And then from there, we took it to social media. And so we got donors' permission to announce these gifts, which were huge for us. And we kind of spread those out. So we hit our number. We got about 23 donors by August 1st of 22, which was when we went public. And then we kind of rolled those out 1 to 2 per week at a time. And so that gave us, basically 10 weeks of content there to put on social media. And of course, those 10 weeks I also used to go out and find new donors as well. And obviously referrals are huge for us, but pumping out those gift commitments, it just made people take notice. And I'm not saying that people were knocking down the doors to give us 25 grand or more just because of a post they saw on social media, but right. It certainly led people to ask more questions, and they saw names of their peers or their friends, and they were thinking, man, what is that? If they're a part of it, that's something I want to be a part of. And so, and obviously referrals are huge for us in our business too. So that's kind of how we did it. We started with our main stakeholders that were LTech members, and then grew it from there.
You created a fear of missing out.
That's right. That FOMO. Yep.
Marketing technique, right?
That's right.
That's interesting. So, okay. So you get to a point to where you're announcing the stakeholders, you're announcing the gifts, and the launch. You said August of 2022?
Correct. August 1st. So we've been at it for a year now publicly. And
a year.
Yep. Right at a year. And another thing, Ty, It was important for us to set goals and publicize those goals. So,
okay.
Before the launch, of course, we're not publicizing those goals, but we wanted to get to 20 to 25. But then when we started August 1st and people started realizing how many shareholders we had, we said, okay, we want to be at 50 shareholders by December 31st.
Oh, okay.
So we had, 4 months there to get from 25 to 50. And we hit it on the head. We got 50 literally like December 20th or something like that. So we've continued to kind of set these goals and then set new goals once we hit those benchmarks. So the next goal is 75 before the end of this calendar year. And I think we're at 70 to date. So on track to hit that as well. But that's just a way for us to continue to kind of push the limits. And then when I'm out, myself or Dr. Woods out visiting with potential prospects, we can say, hey, we're trying to get to 75. We're at 70. You can help us close that gap and hit that goal. I think donors like helping, being a part of helping crossing that finish line too.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so here's the question, right? So you August 1st, 2022, before the football season, you announced this brand new thing that people can be a part of. What were some of the challenges over the first year? We're a year in, right? Really that first football season, some of the challenges you saw when you came to basketball and other sports seasons and the access and information. What did you see as challenges that you've worked out now that you're going into year 2?
Yeah, I mean, the year 1, I don't want to call it your test year. You want to have everything ready when you roll it out. But
right.
There was a lot of things that we learned from. Number one, we had to get our coaches buy-in and get them to understand what the society was and how it was helping their program, even if the gift wasn't specific to their program. Helping them understand, who our key stakeholders are and why it's important for our coaches to be on board and be supportive. So. Right. Like in terms of the access and the exclusivity of this, you can be an Aillet Society shareholder, and even if your gift wasn't to basketball, for example, you still get that basketball pregame experience or private practice experience. And so getting our coaches bought in, and I'm not saying that was difficult. I just think that was important. That's something that we needed to be a little more diligent about on the front end, helping them understand it. And then from there, once they bought in, obviously they've got pretty large followings on social media, and getting them to share and retweet those gifts coming in, that was huge for us. So I think that was one, getting buy-in internally was important. And then there was little things, in terms of some of these private practices and just coordinating with whether it was the director of ops for the sport or
Oh
whoever,
yeah,
things that we
I
could
can
tweak a
imagine.
little bit and make better for the future. But all in all, these are things that our donors never had experienced before. So even though we felt like we could improve on it, for them, it was something new and
Yeah,
something different, and they didn't really know the difference. They thought it was cool in general. So, of course, we're all perfectionists and want to be as best we can
hmm
and all that. But all in all, I felt year one was pretty good, but we definitely got some things we can improve on.
yeah. As we all do. Are you the person, for the lack of a better word, selling this program to the coaches? Was that a part of your role over the last year? Like, hey, look, this is what we're doing. This is how we see it could benefit. We all need new scoreboards. Like at some, you know what I mean? Like, tell me about that aspect of your specific role.
Yeah, absolutely. It was me, and obviously, Dr. Wood's a key piece
Yeah.
of that as well. But yeah, getting them on board, and one of the ironic things in all this is, you know, this is this year's year two for our men's basketball coach, our football coach, and so we started building this out actually before those coaches even got hired. So
Oh wow.
I,
Okay.
I was I was pitching this to the previous coaches, and then we launched, and we have new coaches now, so I have to get them to buy in when we've already publicized all this information, and they've been great. And I'll say this too, Ty. Sonny Cumby, our head football coach, and Talvin Hester, our head men's basketball coach, are both IA Society shareholders.
Oh
So
wow. Okay.
fortunate for us, was able to get in front of them early on when they first joined and pitched this society to them and educated them, but said, hey, you're making pretty good money as a Division I head coach. It would mean a whole lot if you would sign on to be a part of this, and we can announce your commitment. And if we can show our fans and our donors that our coaches are bought in and we're all pulling the same end of the rope, that's huge for us when we're on the road trying to pitch this to donors and everyone else.
Yeah. Is Let me ask this question here specifically. Let's say I come in at 25,000, the 5 year commitment. Am I done? I mean, do I want to commit more, or tell me about that aspect of development, because you, you want more money basically. So tell me about that aspect. Like how do you handle that part? Because you don't want somebody just to commit that and then they may be involved, may not be involved, but then after 5 years, then you hit them back up again. Or I don't understand that part about development, right? So explain it.
Yeah, I mean, we did try to pitch our donors on the fact that, hey, you join this society, we're going to keep you in the know with what's going on. And if there's an opportunity out there that we need more money for, you'll know about it. But we really want to respect the fact that you've committed to a 5 year pledge, and we don't want you to be locked into a $25,000 pledge, and then after year one we come back to you and say, hey, it'd really be nice if you'd give us another 5 grand on top of that. That's not, we wanted to respect those boundaries, but also just have open dialogue though, like I said, and present those opportunities. And if they start asking more questions, then we can say, okay, you know, you locked yourself into 25,000, but we hope you're having a great experience in year one of the society. You see the need for this other project. If you'd like to give us another 5 or 10,000, we can amend your original agreement, and we can bump you up to the next level of the society. So there's been a couple questions like that. I think another thing, Ty, major giving is not a new concept to Louisiana Tech.
Right.
We just, again, never had a way to formally steward and recognize people that were making those commitments. So that being said, when we launched the society, we actually had people that were already in the middle of a major gift pledge. And so that was important to us too, is how do you approach those people that are already locked in? Are they by default a part of your
A part of it,
society?
right? Yeah.
Do you ask them to pay the gift off early and then start a new pledge? And really what we ended up doing, Ty, and the donors felt like this was kind of middle ground, was, let's say Ty Brown gave 25,000 or made that pledge commitment, and you're in year two of that commitment, so you've got $15,000 left on your outstanding pledge balance. One thing we did was we went to those donors, pitched this idea of the IA Society to them, and said, hey, would you mind signing an extension to your agreement? So you've got 3 years left. How about you sign another two, and you're basically starting fresh at 25,000 over 5 years. So it wasn't asking them to pay anything off early. It was just, hey, you're in the habit of giving five a year. Would you just add 2 years onto the back end of this to get you back to a fresh 5 years? And now you're part of our society. So there was probably 5 or 6 donors that were in that boat. And all of them jumped at that. They said, yeah, absolutely. I want to be a part of the society, but I don't want to wait until my pledge is paid off to have to, repledge. I want to be a part of it now. So that was some good middle ground we came to. And that was important to us, again, to have those people be a part of it.
When you present donors, people who are accustomed to giving money for a cause they believe in, when you present opportunities specifically to the Aillet Society of here are the things that we want to work on over the next couple years. We want to build this. We want to invest in this. This thing needs to be funded. Do people step up to the plate? You know what I mean? Are people like, I've always thought we needed that. Tell me how much I need to be the lead gifter, or tell me how that aspect of development works, especially when you have this major giving society.
Yeah, I mean, as a major gift officer, you can't control the response from the donor, but you can
Exactly.
control your own output and your activity, how many visits you're having, how many asks you're putting in front of people, and over the long haul course of that, you're going to find success. So not everyone's going to say yes, but we have had a pretty high success rate. I would say probably higher than whatever the industry standard is. I mean, we're probably 50% or north of that. So every other person we're pitching right now has said yes. Now, obviously, this is a new thing and people are excited. And once you have kind of gone to your first key group of people, you expect the ask to get a little bit harder down the road, especially when you start asking people that maybe haven't been given at that level. Maybe you're identifying an LTAC donor that is giving you $2,500 a year, and now you're coming to them with this concept, hey, you need to up your giving, and at that point you're asking them to give twice as much as they're currently giving.
Right.
So I would say the ask will probably get harder as we get into year two, but definitely people believe in the vision from the conversations we've had and understand the need for it. Getting them to say yes isn't always easy, but for the most part, people have understanding of that. And then I'll say this too: one of the biggest differences between LTAC and the Aillet Society as well. I mentioned earlier, LTAC is unrestricted dollars, so they can't direct those funds where they want it to go as the donor. It is going to operational costs. The Aillet Society money, as long as you're hitting that threshold of $25,000 over 5 years, while we're pushing people to give to our North End Zone project and our academic center, at the end of the day, if they've got a heart for our tennis program, as long as they're meeting that threshold, we're including them in the Aillet Society. So you can give a sport specific gift. So at the end of the day, obviously our job is to align people with what our needs are, but whatever they're passionate about. And so if the academic center just doesn't do it for somebody, but they want to be a part of this society, we can pitch them on the sport they played or the sport they're passionate about and get them in that way too.
Yeah, which is pretty interesting. I have a couple of questions, but I want to know if there's anything else we need to know about this kind of blueprint for creating a major giving society for anybody listening who may want to take this on at some point in the future.
Yeah, I think we hit on all the key points, but
Okay.
looking back at it, I really think that silent phase was the most important phase of all this for us
Okay.
to get some people bought in before we went public and build that credibility. And again, once we went public, it gave us that runway of about 10 weeks of social media posts to get that
Mhm.
momentum going and get that snowball effect and get people bought in. So I think that silent phase was key for us.
Yeah, I think that's very important. The question I have for you is about leadership, right? Uh, 10 years in, you've probably been working for a couple different people, working with a couple different people in terms of developing your own leadership philosophy. So I wonder from you, what are the traits that you admire about leadership? Of course, you work with Dr. Wood, and everybody in the history of college athletics knows who Dr. Wood is. And I wonder if there's some traits you see in him or just people you've worked with in the past about leadership that you admire. And I guess the follow up would be, what traits do you work on within yourself as you develop your leadership style and philosophy?
Yeah, I think for leadership, number one is authenticity. And going
Mm-hmm.
back to Dr. Wood, he is genuinely the same person behind closed doors as he is with a microphone in front of 100 donors. I mean, you're going to get the same guy every day. So authenticity, but then also consistency. Being that same person every day. And the other thing I'll say is just maintaining open lines of communication, being a good communicator. um, I've seen that with Dr. Wood and with our head coaches, and I think that's one thing that they really admire about him. Um, One thing I've picked up on, uh, and me being a sport administrator for our men's golf program, Dr. Wood has a rule for himself, and that rule is he will always answer a head coach's phone call.
Okay.
It doesn't matter what he's doing, the time of day or night it is, he's always going to pick up the phone. Him and I will be in the middle of a meeting, and a coach will call, and he may answer and say, hey, if it's not pressing, let me finish this meeting, I'll call you back. But we've got too much stake in these coaches, and we've got to be able to support them as best we can. At the end of the day, our job is to remove any barriers from them from being successful. And so I've really admired the open lines of communication that he has. And so in terms of emulation, again, being a sport administrator myself, trying to do that with my own head coach, trying to remove those barriers for him. And then the last thing I'll say about leadership and things that I'm trying to emulate is just leading by example. Dr. Wood, I know I keep going back to him, but he's probably is the best example that I've seen in the decade that I've been in this industry. Wow. Okay. Is leading by example, never asking something of your staff that you wouldn't do yourself or haven't already done. I'll give you one quick story, and I'll be brief, but yep. We had a baseball game last season where we had a rain delay, and an hour or two delay. Fans were up under the concourse while it was raining. Well, as soon as the rain stopped and they gave the go-ahead for fans to go back into their seats, Dr. Wood and his kids as well were the first ones grabbing a towel and going down and wiping off seats. And he didn't ask anybody else to do that, but obviously when you're on his leadership team and you're at the game and you see your boss doing that, you're going to jump in and do the same thing. And so it was really just cool to see that happen organically. He grabs a towel, then, next person grabs a towel, I jump in there, and we're all wiping off seats for our fans. And I tell you what, Ty, I still hear that story today from our fans and donors, just the amount of credibility that he earned early on as the athletic director from our fans just by leading by example.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. So we said authenticity, right? Open lines of communication or just effective communication, and then really leading by example are the things that you see in terms of leadership and that you try to work on within yourself.
Yeah. Yes. And authenticity and honesty. And that goes with those clear lines of communication. But one thing with Eric as well is he lets you know how he feels. He's a nice guy, but at the end of the day, he's got things he has to accomplish too. And so he lets you know where you stand, good or bad, and things you need to work on and improve on. And I think as a leader, your job can't be to just make sure everybody likes you or that everyone's happy with you. Of course, we want people to be happy in the workplace, but they've got to know where they stand too. Otherwise, they're hurting the organization.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. Well, Colton, this has been an excellent conversation. I feel like I've learned a lot, right? The steps to create a major giving society was specifically the steps you used to create a major giving society, and how you did those specific things there on campus at Louisiana Tech, and of course, your thoughts on leadership. I really appreciate you joining us here on the One Question Leadership Podcast.
Thanks, Ty. I appreciate you having me. Had a lot of fun today.
Yes, sir. That was Colton Primm. He is the Senior Associate Athletics Director for Championship Resources at Louisiana Tech. And of course, I am Ty Brown with one question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today. This episode of the One Question Leadership Podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.